It's the Matt Sager Podcast on Wednesday, December 12th. How's your week going so far? We're halfway through, so whether it's good or whether it's just the worst week ever, it's going to end. Part of the journey is the end, as a wise man adrift in space once said in the Avengers Endgame trailer. So, everyone in government is apparently your senile great-great-grandfather. Everybody. Not just certain parties, politicians, presidents, whatever. Watching Congress interview the people from Google yesterday was embarrassing. I was embarrassed to share a country with these people. I was embarrassed that these people are my elected representatives. Talking about, I got your apparatus here. You mean my search engine? Right, the apparatus. Now, when I type in my daughter's name, I find a link to Breitbart. Is that politically motivated? No, it's just that your daughter hasn't written anything or appeared in anything that appears in an online article that Google does a search for. Okay, but what about when I want to make cookies with it? Yes, we're a search engine. This went on for 9-10 hours. It was crazy. It was varying degrees of crazy, but there wasn't any politician where he went, oh, yeah, that was a good point about censorship, about hate speech, about the proliferation of conspiracy theories. It was just like, what if I want to find a waffle making recipe? It's like, sir, you've called me before your committee. Waffles are probably another matter that we can talk about in a less serious, less formal setting. Well, yes, but I'm really having trouble with my waffles. It was just a freaking embarrassment. Of course, there's no greater embarrassment than the guy occupying the White House, whose lawyer went down today big time. Michael Cohen, who once said he would take a bullet for President Trump, is now taking a 3-year stretch, spilling everything. Trump is allegedly seething behind the scenes, but that all is drama and still unfolding, and we don't really know. I mean, we know Cohen's guilty, and we know the crimes he's been found guilty of were all done under the direction of someone called Individual One, who was clearly Donald Trump. But we don't know how it's going to affect Trump or his presidency or his mood, which is always pretty foul anyway. And speaking of foul moods, I'm actually in a good mood, but I'm operating at less than peak capacity. I've got a really cool thing in the works that I want to tell you about. Essentially, I'm working with a guy who's likely going to become my co-host at some point in the near future. But the kinks we have to work out with Pro Tools and the way to do it remotely is just, I can't tell you how much of my day that takes up. So I'm coming at you, having been talking into a mic for no one but me and this co-host of mine for hours. And that alone sort of takes a little bit of the spring out of my step. But I alluded earlier in the week, or maybe it was last week, to the fact that I'd had dental surgery. This was more severe than I might have let on. So let me first say, it's going to get pretty gross when I describe it. But what happened was, they had to implant something into my jaw, and in order to do that, they had to pry my jaw open and drill into the bone and screw something in, and then take a ratchet and until it was all the way down, all the way through the bone. And it's actually supposed to get better after 3-5 days. And the entire recovery process is supposed to be like 10 days. But it turns out the human body has nerves. And so my back is freaking out and spasming, and my face is like thumping. You can actually watch. I'm so glad this is not yet. At some point it's going to be, but it's not a video cast. If you could see me, I'm not swollen or anything, but my muscles are doing like a little, if you ever like moved your hand under a blanket to entice your cat into chasing it, it looks like there's a little hand underneath a bunch of my muscles just going doop, 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 doop. Little spasms happening all along my trapezius and my neck and my face and my jaw. And then there's the fact that there is a drill hole and an alien item in my jaw. And it's rough. So I apologize for what is going to be an especially abbreviated episode tonight. And I also apologize for walking you through that grotesque truth of what's going on with me. But I figure better to just be upfront about it rather than like, boy, Matt's making a lot of short, sort of unpleasant sounding shows this week. Wonder if anything's going on. The answer is yes. There's a hole in my jaw, which is occupied by an alien object, and my body's just freaking out about the entire ordeal. And while all this is going on, I'm spending my days trying to get a connection happening with my co-host, which is going to be great for the show. It's all worth it. I'm very happy about all this. I mean, I'm not happy I'm in pain. but I'm just explaining why I've been delivering a little bit less and why tonight's going to be especially so, with my real apologies. But this is all in the service of making me a better host so I can do a better show for you, because you are what matters in all this. I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. We're almost up to episode 75 of the Matt Sager podcast, and I can't thank you enough. I've got a Patreon. I've got a merch store for my friends at We Have Merch. Please check out the description for tonight's podcast episode for both of those. And it's been a while since I've answered a question. I've been getting lots of requests and comments, but it's been a long time since we played a good game of
What's in the box?
I love playing What's in the Box, where you ask me weird, obscure questions about my personal life or my history, or about weird, esoteric music or comics or books or movie trivia. Hit me up and ask me anything. I'll give out all my contact info at the end of tonight's episode. The only other thing I wanted to mention before I give you an early goodnight is just this hilarious comment from Christian Bale, who's promoting Vice, which looks amazing. You know, he's one of these method actors who risks his own personal health for his performances, which I find very impressive. If he were my friend, I would probably tell him not to. There is a real devotion to the craft evident in stuff like The Machinist, where he dropped like 80 pounds and looked just emaciated. And now for Vice to look like Dick Cheney, he got really fat. I mean, he certainly put on 60 or so pounds. And I know that Mac from It's Always Sunny did that once, and he got a fatty liver that he has to live with for the rest of his life. Tom Hanks used to love playing fast and loose with his body weight. He'd put on pounds, he'd lose them. He did the movie where he was on a desert island, Castaway, dropped a ton of weight for that, and shortly thereafter got a diagnosis. Guess what, pal? You're 50 and you got diabetes. I wonder if you haven't been doing something like eating tons of horrible food for you and then going months barely eating at all. Because that's how you get diabetes, you dummy. So if he were my friend, I would advise him against it. But as a fan, I am impressed. But the funny thing he said today, talking to Vice, he referred to the good old days when he was playing Batman. It came up because he was asked who ought to play Trump in a movie. And he mentioned, oh yeah, you know, we were filming on Batman in Trump Tower, and I saw Donald Trump, and he said, come on up to the office. I think he thought I was Bruce Wayne because I was dressed as Bruce Wayne. So he talked to me like I was Bruce Wayne, and I just went with it. It was quite entertaining, really. I had no idea at the time that he would think about running for president. So say we all. But that is hilarious. And it's not the first time that this has happened with Trump, where he's confused fact with fiction. And I'm not referring to any of his comments or statements or actions as president, but rather to an episode of Opie and Anthony from 2008 with wrestler Triple H, who said that Donald Trump called him to find out if Vince McMahon was okay, because they had done this whole storyline where his limo had been blown up by Steve Austin, Stone Cold Steve Austin. So, yeah, when you're running for president, it's important that you know that Batman is not a real guy and that Vince McMahon is probably fine if you saw him do something on a WWE or a WWF program. And it's just mind-boggling. But with that, that's your daily dose of surrealism, which sadly happens to just be the news. But anyway, here's wishing you the very, very best for the rest of your week. I will be back tomorrow with a much longer, more substantive show. Tonight, I just wanted to check in and say hi, that I'm thinking about you, and that there's a lot of work going on behind the scenes to make the Matt Sager podcast much, much better. Not that I think it's bad, but I think it has limitless potential, and we're going to start to realize that very soon. In the meantime, get in touch. As I said, I'd love to play a game of What's in the Box, or just comment or ask me anything. Email matt@mattsager.com or call 646-535-4788. You can also get me on social media. On Twitter, I'm @MattSager. On Instagram, I'm Real Matt Sager. And on Facebook, I'm The Matt Sager. Also, please check out my voiceover page there, Matt Sager VO. And if you're listening to this podcast, come on, check out the podcast page. It's facebook.com/Matt Sager Podcast. And for the rest, more social media links, my blog posts and articles, my voiceover reels and contact info, and much, much more. Check out mattsagervoiceover.com. And as I said, check out the links in the description for tonight's episode for my Patreon and my store from wehavemerch.com. Talk to you tomorrow.